Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Being Patient community and all the newcomers joining us today. We have a very special interview with Hollywood duo, power couple, Lauren Miller Rogen and her husband, Seth Rogen, joining us from their home. Thanks so much to the two of you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So I always say, obviously no one chooses Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's chooses us. And the fact that we have you two joining us today says a lot. And we're really appreciative for your time. This disease is so widespread. No one's immune from it. And Lauren, I know that your mom had Alzheimer's disease. So I just wanted to really start with your story and really understanding, I know it was early onset. Can you tell us about, when the journey began for you?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, before my mom had Alzheimer's, my grandparents had Alzheimer's, my mom's mother and father. So I was familiar with it. And my grandfather passed away when I was 12 and my grandmother when I was 18. And then at my college graduation, my mom started repeating herself. She told me the same story a few times. And, I, had a lot of denial about it, but I kind of just knew. And then, over the next couple years, things, definitely got worse. She started repeating herself even more and the confusion. And by the time she was 54, it was pretty clear that there was, really something happening. And by 55, between 54 and 55 was when we got the official diagnosis. It was, again, although we somewhat expected it, obviously it was completely devastating. And, we spent a long time feeling lost and scared. My mom was a teacher for 35 years. She taught first grade, which means she taught children how to read. And she was someone who was really active and vibrant and had a lot of relationships and friendships, and she participated in things. And so it just seemed like such a loss for her to lose all of these abilities. And eventually it got worse, and my dad had to retire to care for her. And we hired someone to come into our house. Fortunately, we were able to afford that. We moved my parents closer to live near us so we could help. I would say, I guess about 7 or so years into her journey, 8 years into her journey, she stopped being able to walk. And the last 5 years or so were, she was bedridden, on nonverbal, just completely needed help doing everything that a human being does. And we lost her last February, which, is, devastating, but at the same time, after a 15-year journey and, sort of waiting for my mother to die, I feel like we finally felt some relief. And, that's the journey in a very broad nutshell, I would say.
Yeah, and it's a familiar one for so many people in our community who are, going through this and who have gone through it. Your mom, she had early onset Alzheimer's at such a young age, and you have obviously a strong familial link to the disease. Did you ever talk about it with her prior to, like, in the context of was she scared that she might end up with Alzheimer's disease?
Yes, she would talk about it more, like, often. And she would say, when I get Alzheimer's, and this is before she showed any symptoms or anything. And I would say, stop saying that. Why would you say something like that? And so then when she started showing symptoms, it was frustrating because I definitely had those feelings of like, well, why did she give this to her? Which is not reality. But, it's, back then, as far as like a familial thing, I don't think we quite understood that, but I understood from seeing my grandparents go through it, how this would feel to her. And one time I asked her, I'd read in like a teen magazine when I was growing up that like the place to have hard conversations was in the car while you're going somewhere, because that come to a natural end when you get somewhere. So one time we went to Target and I asked her if she was scared. And I remember we ended up having a conversation in the Target parking lot and she said that and this is my mom, but she said, that she wasn't scared for herself, but she was scared for me and my brother and my dad. That she knew that she would be taken care of, but she was, worried about us, which, she was a selfless woman.
And as we know, the stress on the caregivers, which we will talk about, but I love how you two are approaching this as a duo, and husband and wife. You founded this charity HFC, which stands for Hilarity for Charity. Seth, give me a little perspective. From your perspective, have you been touched by Alzheimer's other than with Lauren's family, with your own side of the family? And what have you learned about all this whole experience being the partner of someone who's been so impacted?
No, Alzheimer's is actually not very prevalent on my side of the family. We are Jews who die of other things on my side of the family. We come to our untimely end in a myriad of other ways: heart disease, high cholesterol, diabetes, things like that. But unfortunately, Alzheimer's is not prevalent in my genetics, and I'd never really seen it firsthand until meeting Lauren and seeing especially what happened with her mother. So it was very eye-opening. I didn't realize what especially at first, kind of bleak situation it was. And it's one of those things that the more we've gotten into it, the more we've found that there is a lot of hope. But we live in a very weird time, and we're kind of like at like that time in history when they didn't know smoking was bad for you. Like, people don't take care of their brains. They don't understand how to take care of their brains. Doctors don't educate patients as to how to take care of their brains. And it's something that, has been like a very fascinating journey and a very sad journey, but ultimately, in some ways, a very hopeful journey. So, yeah.
So we're getting a question in about the familial link, I'm wondering this, and you don't feel like you need to disclose it, but I went, and after my mom had Alzheimer's, and my dad's a geneticist too, so I went out and I got a genetic test because I wanted to know if I do have a genetic link. I didn't. My mom had later onset Alzheimer's. So I just, you're being asked right now, can you talk about how much greater risk family members have once you know you have that link?
Yeah. First, I'm not a doctor or scientist, so always refer to people with degrees for your actual information, but I can shed some light on it, which is there are genes that people can have that definitely sort of dictate your risk level for Alzheimer's. There's a very, very, very rare gene called the Psn1 gene. And I think there's another one that is, I think it's like less than 1% of people have it or something like that. 1%, it's or 1% of also, I can't remember. Again,
yeah, it's Psn 1 and 2, and then there's APP. Those are the early onset markers, I think, right?
Exactly, yes. Yeah. And those are much more aggressive forms. Then there are, genes that are very common, like APOE4. Everyone has APOE. You can have 2s, 3s, 4s. You have 2 copies. APOE4 is the sort of noted gene that runs with Alzheimer's. Having 2 copies doubles your risk. Having 1 copy slightly increases your risk. But at the same time, and we can get into this, what we've learned is and the saying is something like, your genes may be the roadmap, but they don't have to be your destiny. Mm-hmm. And that so much can be done to alter your risk for prevention, to take control of your brain and your genetic health. And I'm sure, growing up with a geneticist, you greatly understand this. But that, you don't have to be afraid of these tests. It's good information to have. If you have the information, then you can take action. Yeah. And if you don't have the information, then you can't take action. So, for me, it's been something very powerful to do a deep dive into, to know that, what I have in my family.
And it's, the term is known as epigenetics, which is like the environment's influence on our own genetics, right? So, I mean, if you talk to my kids right now, they think I'm obsessed with my brain and it drives them nuts. But, you know, when you have a mom with Alzheimer's, you suddenly start to think about what I can do to take care of my own brain. So what do you guys do? I mean, do you both talk about your brain health, and are you actively taking measures to improve your brain?
Yeah.
All the time.
Right?
We do talk about our brain health.
Every day.
I mean, we're both writers mostly by trade. It's probably the thing we spend the most time doing throughout the day. So we are very brain dependent as far as, you know, both of our careers as high fashion models dried up a few years ago. So we've had to pivot to more intellectual pursuits. But so in the meantime, our brains are important for us.
It's nice to have something to fall back on, though, if you need it.
Exactly. You never know. So we talk about, we do a lot for our sleep is very important. Our nutrition, what we eat and what we more importantly don't eat, I guess, is very important for our brains. Brain health in general is something that, we spend, I would say, inordinate amount of time
there's
talking about.
There's, you know, I would say there's around 5 elements of brain health. And around 2 or 3, 4 years ago, we got into it. My uncle was also diagnosed, my mom's brother, with Alzheimer's. And unfortunately, he lived on the East Coast, and I was looking for a doctor to send him to. And what just happened here?
Sorry.
I can still see you.
Someone started updating on the computer.
We're good.
And found Richard Isaacson at the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic at Weill Cornell in New York. And so he is the one who's sort of, you know, helped us understand how to go on a brain health journey. And so it's sleep, like Seth said, it's nutrition, it's diet, it's exercise, diet, nutrition, mental health, and
learning new things.
Learning new things, brain stimulant, which we also do.
Which we also do.
What do you learn? What are you learning?
We do pottery, we're currently enrolled in a glaze making workshop online, which is essentially like intense chemistry. We have a closet full of chemicals. We're learning what they do and how to create glazes using them. And honestly, it's an entirely new skill. It's a whole part of my brain I never thought I would ever really use. So
Yeah. And then
so I'm so glad. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's just something that, you know, Alzheimer's can be, you know, can feel dark, can feel heavy. And in the area of brain health, there's so much light and hope. And I feel like it's given us so much energy in our mission and just in my own personal life.
There's fun things you can do that stimulate your brain as well.
Yeah. And, you know, I started to play piano because I hadn't touched the piano since I was 10 years old. And, you know, I actually noticed that my brain was changing the more I played, because when I first started, I'd have to focus on my left hand, and I would because I'm right-handed. So it was really unnatural. And the more I played, the more I realized that I didn't have to think about one hand anymore. And that's neuroplasticity, right? So I mean, it's really, actually, if you pay attention to it, you do see cues as to how we can't see it, but we actually do feel it in certain ways. So let's talk a little bit about HFC, because I love that you guys are doing this and you're using, you know, your writing, your acting skills to really translate that into good cause for Alzheimer's disease. So tell us a little bit about HFC, what you guys are currently into. I know you focus a lot on caregiving and providing support, but give us a little overview.
Yeah. Well, we started in 2012 by just doing a variety show. Just, you know, we work in comedy, and that, you know, is sort of the area we know. And so that's what made sense to raise money and awareness for this disease. But then felt like we had, you know, an opportunity to really dig in and shape our mission, and formed a full organization, which became our own 501c3 in 2017, 18, I can't remember. And, you know, our mission has really been focused, like we said, on brain health, but also on caregivers. You know, we saw firsthand the toll that caregiving took on my dad and on us and my brother. And, you know, certainly we've gotten to know so many families along the way. And being a caregiver is such an extreme burden to carry. And so we've partnered with Home Instead Senior Care, and we provide at-home care for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it, but have chosen to keep their loved ones at home. We, of course, provide virtual support groups. We did virtual support groups before the pandemic because getting support through a computer can be easier than driving to a group. And then I am so excited about this Friday. We're hosting our first ever HFC CareCon, which is an afternoon of seminars to help caregivers and help them to navigate and give them tools to make their caregiving journey a bit easier. We're going to have our panels will be moderated by Sanjay Gupta and Kimberly Williams Paisley and Ashley Williams, Sean Hayes. Yep. Lisa Gibbons.
I think over 1,000 people have signed up already.
Actually, early before the over 1,300.
There you go. Which, yeah, that's a lot of caregivers. Yeah.
And it is such a huge need. Tell us a little bit, like your mom was cared for, you said, at home, in her home. Tell us what that meant. Like even, in the end stages, I mean, it does, this disease gets harder and harder to manage as the person needs more and more care. What was it like in your circumstance? Was your mom in a separate home, or was she in your home, or what was that like?
So, again, we're so lucky to be able to afford this type of situation that we got a duplex for my parents, actually, which was a really amazing setup. My mom was on one side with her caregiver, and my dad was literally right next door on the other side of the wall. So he could be there as much as he needed, but also he could go to his side and close the door and take a breath if he needed that. And we had 24-hour care there with her. Amazing angelic caregivers on top of my dad, who, was completely devoted to taking care of her and feeding her and, lifting her from her bed to her chair and the chair back to the bed. And, it's really, truly a 24/7 job, and was for her for many number of years.
Yeah, we have a question on that too, from someone saying, I'd like to ask Seth and Lauren if they use humor in their relationship with her mom in relation to Alzheimer's. My mom's 90. I found keeping it light, never say the word Alzheimer's or dementia. I try to be her memory when I can, and then just tell her memory sucks and laugh. I don't dwell on it or make her feel it. I try to make her laugh, wondering what they think.
I think humor helped us cope. I think and what's interesting, and for me as an outsider, every time I'd seen Alzheimer's portrayed in anything, it was generally older people, and with kind of there was a phase of lighthearted forgetfulness before kind of the darkness really creeped in. And with Lauren's mother, there was never that phase. It went very dark very fast, and there was never an opportunity to use humor in any way, shape, or form when relating to Lauren's mother or family about what was happening. It was, of all the things I've encountered in my life, devoid of humor in every way, shape, or form, which I think is why we look to humor for personal outlets and as a way to help distract people from how terrible the disease is. But if you are in a situation where your family member or loved one can relate in that way, then that's great. But truthfully, much to my shock from how I had seen Alzheimer's portrayed, there was not one day where there was that funny, let's kind of joke around about how forgetful this is. It went from horrifying to more horrifying to more horrifying on a day-to-day basis. And it was not funny.
I will add though that, and many people I'm sure have experienced similar to us, but I've heard many doctors say, if you've seen one case of Alzheimer's, you've seen one case of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And that, we have a partnership with an organization called Laughter on Call, and they specifically work with caregivers and people living with Alzheimer's to include improvisation in their daily lives, and ways to lighten situations if the person living with Alzheimer's is able to do that. And so I think it's a really case by case basis, for us that like Seth said, wasn't really part of our journey, but I think that things like improv and of course, finding the lighter side can always be helpful if you can do that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love that you both are doing is pointing out, like Seth said, this is not only an old person's disease. I mean, not that it's tragic. It's not tragic when it does happen to elderly people, but there's more people who are more younger people who are being impacted and will continue to be impacted by this disease. I mean, for you, Lauren, that's extraordinary that you lived through this journey from your grandparents to your mom at such a young age. I mean, Alzheimer's has really been a big part of your life for most of your life.
I don't remember a time, unfortunately, where I haven't had a loved one with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, and I mean that's
right now. It's true. This is honestly,
we're in the honeymoon
after
period.
my mom died, I said to my therapist, I was like, "This is the first time I haven't been losing a loved one to Alzheimer's."
There you go.
Like,
I've often wondered this, but do you ever feel the need just to kind of let it go for a little while? I mean, because Alzheimer's is consuming, it's not an easy, light thing. I mean, have you felt the need to kind of just say, I need a break?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I take break. I mean, I don't, HFC is something that, look, I mean, it's an organization. I don't want to be like, oh, it's so easy and wonderful, and we never have any stress from it, because that's not real. But, it's something that gives me hope. It was an outlet for me. It was where I found positivity. It was where I found optimism. And so HFC became the break. There are times when, yes, I'm like, I don't want to talk about Alzheimer's right now. But at the same time, it's been such a blessing to be able to make any sort of impact in it, that, I think we found a balance that I think I can handle, and I think Seth can handle. I'm speaking for him.
Yeah, you do.
I love this question that Carrie Cuskers asked. She said, any suggestions for preserving personhood and destigmatizing dementia in the community? That's such an important question. Anything you've learned? I mean, you guys have a great network to leverage off of, just because you can go into a room and draw a big crowd and there's a lot of notable people in there. But what have you learned on your journey?
It's tough. I mean, look, on one hand, I've found so much energy in the shift in what I've personally seen from when we started talking about this disease to now. But that doesn't mean there isn't still a huge stigma that surrounds it. And I think that we just have to keep talking about it. I've seen there's some amazing advocates of people who are living with Alzheimer's, who more recently I've seen come, and speak. There's a man, Greg O'Brien, who's an amazing speaker, writer, who has been living with Alzheimer's. And I think that he's someone who is, in my opinion, like really tearing down stigma. And, I think it's about an individual's comfort, but I think that, the more families, the more caregivers, the more people with Alzheimer's talk about it, that's the way it can help. But it's hard. We made a documentary called This is Alzheimer's. That's just a very simple, like, this is Alzheimer's, look at it. And, we can't get distribution for it.
Because it's a real bummer.
Well,
I mean, yeah, I'd say
it's not a happy ending. You mean, like, it doesn't have.
Well, it is, even because we've talked about HFC and how we find hope in that. But I think it's something that people want to lock away and not confront themselves with it until they are forced to.
It seems like there are a few things that make people more uncomfortable than speaking about brain health in general, and that I would say, like, mental health is a offshoot of that statement. Yeah. But I think, like, especially in America right now, like, the whole subject of mental health, brain health is like, people just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to. It is just like, it is weirdly, of all the things I talk about, the most taboo thing, and the thing that makes the people the most uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I made a movie where food has sex with each other. So that speaks to how taboo brain health is.
Why do you think that is? I mean, let's kind of unpack that one, because I actually think that's so true. But there's been a lot of conversations because of COVID around depression and mental health and everything. Why do we think it is? Why is that people's reactions? Why is there such a stigma around our brains? And I mean, I know my mom felt a lot of shame with her diagnosis. She didn't want to tell people that I have Alzheimer's. You know, it's a really hard thing. Maybe because it's associated with our intellect. I don't know, but I find the more you talk about it, though, the less, like with my kids, for example, we constantly talk about Alzheimer's because we have a family member with Alzheimer's. So to them, they're growing up like you, Lauren, where it's a topic of conversation, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, not to get too like dark or philosophical, but I think that humans have an inherent fear of death. And that's why we've created all these constructs to help us deal with it. And I think that with a fear of death comes with a fear of losing control. And I think that, you know, your mental faculties are key in maintaining control as a human being. And so therefore it's scary. It's why we obsess about youth, and we are obsessed with tomorrow instead of today. And, you know, I think that the more we can, again, like confront reality that we're all human, everyone is going to die someday of something. And we should not deny that, and try to do what we can today to learn and control, prevent, take hold of whatever we can, whatever science tells us we can do, if we're so scared about it, because there is much to be done. And to live in denial, to me, doesn't help anyone. You know, my mom also didn't want us to tell anyone, and that certainly wasn't helpful at all for her, for me, for the Alzheimer's as a whole. And so, you know, I think it's about just not being so scared. I don't. Do you have anything to add to that? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about the research, like HFC. Are you guys giving money to research as well?
Yeah.
I know you. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. Because I mean, you know, we're all looking on that spectrum of like what's going to help in the you know, to take us closer to the cure. Or, you know, I don't think there's going to be one magic pill, but, you know, we are hoping that there will be a lot of new therapies that do come out that help us to either prevent or slow down the clock, so to speak. So
yeah.
Where are you guys on the research of this, and what types of research do you tend to support?
Again, brain health education is an area that we think is probably the most realistic and immediate route to people gaining some control over this disease. You know, it would be great if there was a cure, but again, like there's no cure for lung cancer, but people have a much better sense now of how to not get lung cancer than they did, you know, 30 years ago. Not to say no one gets it, but you can do a lot more to not get it. And I think like that is how we have been kind of contextualizing this. Like right now we're at a time when everyone's just going crazy and no one's even considering that maybe their activity, what they're eating, how much they're exercising, and what they're sleeping is affecting their brain health. And that's something that we just know. You can delay, what is it, 60, 40, 50?
40, what these days science is saying that 4 out of 10 cases of Alzheimer's can be prevented or delayed if someone lives a brain healthy lifestyle. So we are focusing on brain health research. We've, you know, worked with the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic with Dr. Isaacson in New York City. We have created brain health education tools because teaching people how to use this information is really key, obviously. And we'll continue to go down the route of investing in prevention research. You know, I would love to fund a drug. And if people want to give us the billions of dollars that will take, I'm happy and know exactly where it should go. But I will also do what I can with what we have, which is, you know, really help people today, which is what we want to do.
And the research on the brain health is so critical too. You know, I always find that when you say, okay, go exercise 30 minutes a day, then people are like, yeah, heard it, done it, you know. But if you tell them and explain to them that you're actually adding gray matter to your hippocampus, you know, it changes kind of the way that, you know, again, so I've always thought to all the tech people watching out there, come out with a brain scan that shows us what the difference is, right? And that could be a more motivating factor for people to really care about their brains.
Yeah, absolutely.
So So I just, you know, a lot of people are asking about the documentary, actually saying, start a GoFundMe and let's get it funded, you know? How far away are you from it?
Yeah, we've already.
It's done. It's funded. Thank you. That's lovely.
Okay, cool.
About getting it on the right platform so people see it.
Okay, Netflix, or you have HFC or Hilarity for Charity was on. You have a series on Netflix, right? Is it?
We had a special on Netflix a few years ago.
Yeah, one of our variety shows. You can watch it on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, so just to wrap it up here, give us just a piece of advice. A lot of people are saying thank you for sharing your story, but what can you tell us to learn on this journey? So, you know, Lauren, first you, and then Seth. Just give us something that you've.
Well, two things. One, follow HFC, because if you want to learn about brain health, we will teach you. So you can get on our mailing list or follow us on social media. But we share information all the time. But second, I will say the easiest thing you can do to take care of your brain is sleep. Develop good sleep habits, which means going to bed at the same time every night, waking up around the same time every morning, which will happen naturally if you have the same bedtime. Making sure that you have a cool room. We have a pad that we put on our bed that's extra cooling. Blue light glasses before bed, which helps tell your brain that it should start shutting down. Wearing a sleep mask all night will help regulate your sleep. And wear a sleep tracker. You can get a Whoop, which is we work with the company Whoop. It's a band, can help track your sleep and your activity that way. But my tip, sleep, it's free. You do it in your own bed. You don't have to stand while you're doing it.
Someone's asking, I have to say, as you're saying this, how do you deal with alcohol consumption?
We don't drink.
We're not big drinkers, but alcohol is not great for your brain, unfortunately. Look, a little moderation here and there, but as someone who wears a sleep tracker every night, I can tell you that one glass of wine within 2 hours of bedtime is going to essentially ruin my sleep for the night. And it's not that my sleep won't count, but it won't be good quality sleep for my brain.
Yeah. It speaks to sugar. I think, like what like smoking is for your lungs and what like fat is for your heart, sugar is for your brain. Like it is, if you never had any sugar again for the rest of your life, you'd be much healthier. And that includes alcohol, most fruit. You don't need fruit. That's a lie. Like
berries, though.
Berries are good. Berries are good. But like if you never have an apple again or an orange for the rest of your life,
orange juice,
you would be much healthier. So unfortunately, sugar is like wine, alcohol, all this stuff has sugar. Like it, literally, like no sugar is better than any sugar. So it's a real bummer, but that is the truth. Eat some French fries instead, although those have complex carbohydrates which turn into sugar. So
we're all screwed no matter which way. So Seth, just wrap it up for us as the partner of someone who's had, you know, such a heavy life with Alzheimer's. What advice as the partner could you give us?
Implore your partner to seek a therapist or a professional who is more equipped to deal with these types of emotions than you. As I said to Lauren very early, I was like, "This is a professional level of emotional weight to deal with." Like, I was like, I can be supportive, but I don't actually understand like how to help you navigate this in like a meaningful way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand the complexities of therapy, you know, and it feels like if there was ever someone who would need that, it's someone going through what is decidedly a traumatic experience, you know. And so, that was probably the smartest thing I ever did was.
And I mean, but when you both got married, Lauren, you were already in this journey, right? It was.
Oh, that was like.
This is when we started dating.
That was year 6 of my mom's. You know. But
we've been together. It actually started around when we started. We've been together like 15 years, so it started around when we started dating.
Yeah. Well, thank you to both of you, and you know, we'll give the CareCom. Can anyone sign up to CareCom?
Anyone can sign up.
We'll post the link.
Go to post the link, and join us. It should be, you know, full of good information, and we'll try to have a good time. We'll keep it upbeat and you know, give people some tools to make it all a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And thank you for that too, because as we all know, the stress on the caregiver is immense, and any other tools that could be employed would be amazing. And just to be with people who are with a shared experience helps so much. So thank you both so much for your work and your advocacy. And let us know how we can support. We'll post all the links to your sites, and we're really grateful for the work that you do in raising awareness. And, all the best to your family, Lauren, as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye. So if anyone wants to see this in its entirety, go to beingpatient.com. Just a reminder, don't forget to sign up for our newsletters, because we're going to give you upcoming talks with people like Lauren and Seth, and top scientists from around the world. We have patient perspective. We have it all. So please do join the Being Patient community if you haven't already done so. And we will keep you abreast, and we will bring you the latest on Alzheimer's research and welcome people into the community. So thanks so much for joining us.